A long while back now, in the wake of the covert signing of the Migrant Compact, I ended up coming across a multitude of documents from the UN which were all dated years before the first refugee had ever left Syrian territories. And as far as I was concerned, it was enough reason to believe that the refugee slash migrant crisis, or crises, were in actual fact nothing of the sort, what we were being told they were, and instead were manufactured in order to bring about the compacts as the solution. And in the space of, 5 or 6 years almost, it's gone from Syrian refugees to women and children, to mainly children, who were not children. That was a bit of a uproar for a time. Then it went somewhat silent, re-emerging again to incorporate people from similar countries such as Afghanistan and Iraq, etc., before swiftly moving on to become the migrant crisis, which was interchanged with refugees on occasion, and those occasions became more frequent until it was renamed completely to the migrant crisis. And throughout all of this, the blame has always been directed at these non-existent people smugglers. Even today they still get blamed, and it's pretty obvious who the real people smugglers are in all of this, but of course these people will tell you a different story, and that is of course the NGOs, whom are funded by the usual suspects, as per usual, who seem to go out of their way to gallivant the Mediterranean Sea, always have done, under this pretext of simply carrying out rescue missions under maritime law. You know, how convenient. You keep telling yourself that, you know. But every time they do this, they encourage more people to embark on similar journeys, and the people smugglers that get blamed relentlessly whenever an atrocity occurs. I think the people that call themselves humanitarian aid workers really need to take a long hard look at themselves. You know, I don't dispute that there's probably some in and around them that genuinely think that they are simply rescuing people who happen to be fleeing whatever it may be that they are supposedly fleeing. But the reality of the matter is, a good portion of these people know exactly what the fuck they're doing, and it doesn't really matter when it's all said and done, because regardless of whether or not they're oblivious to the true intentions of what's occurring, they are still useful idiots for the people who have planned this meticulously. That said, I came across this from The Independent, who seems to be well on its way to emulating The Guardian as of late. It's becoming absolutely abhorrent to see some of the shit that they punt out on a regular basis, but this one's a bit of a belter, it has to be said. I help rescue migrants in the Mediterranean. Here's why we don't cooperate with the Libyan coast guards. Why are you rescuing economic migrants is anyone's guess, considering I could understand if you were rescuing refugees or helping refugees get from A to B, but African economic migrants who are only there because they know fine well that you will be waiting for them in the Med somewhere along the line doesn't constitute a rescue mission in the slightest. If anything, this is just a clear and utter exploit of maritime law. But of course, that never gets addressed. We have to go along with this farcical bullshit. You are simply rescuing these desperate people. Rescuing in the Mediterranean is not the same as rescuing in other waters. It's become an act of suspicion and defiance from European authorities. Attempts are made to disincentivize our actions, and the most vulnerable are targeted. Many of whom are rescued by NGO ships in the last year have been punished with weeks of waiting at sea on overcrowded boats in critical condition, with unnecessary delays in granting a safe port in which to disembark. You know, just... If the European authorities had any desire to end this fabricated crisis, they would have done so a long time ago. The fact of the matter is, they've sat idly by, silently, and allowed this to continue, because they want it to continue. It's all part of the plan. The fact of the matter is, the only reason that people are still in need of quote-unquote rescuing in the Mediterranean Sea is for two reasons, actually. One is, of course, the presence of NGOs, and second of all, the lack of pushback from Europe. They will continue to come over here until somebody puts their foot down, or people put their foot down. A crisis will only be a crisis for as long as it's allowed to be a crisis for. But when common sense should prevail but never does, it tells you all you need to fucking know about what's occurring here. You know? But it has to be said, whose fault exactly is it when you find yourself on an overcrowded boat with economic migrants from Africa who you've told specifically you'll drop off in Europe? Whose fault is it when your plan backfires, where you're left with a boatload of people to float about aimlessly until somebody finally caves in and lets you enter their port? Not to mention, a lot of these NGOs had a tendency to wait around territorial waters such as Italy's, with the intention of getting into Italy's ports, knowing full well that Italy would refuse, when, if the well-being of the Africans who are becoming impatient on your boat was really one of your top concerns, you would have deviated from the ports you were trying to enter, knowing full well you wouldn't be able to get in to, and go to a port where you know you would have been granted access. And I love that little quip at the end there. Granting a safe port at which to disembark. I mean, just... this is fucking laughable. Maritime law just being completely and utterly shafted and redefined. With these fake fucking rescue missions. You know? All of this happened because we firmly refused to bring the rescued back to Libya. Stop calling them rescued when you met them halfway or a quarter of the way from where they disembarked from originally. It's hardly grounds to call it a rescue mission. So either you are trying to big yourself up on some moral pedestal or you're lying. Second of all, when it goes on to talk about how the Libyan Coast Guard is deemed human rights violator 101, it kind of goes back to the previous point in relation to where the fault would lie if these people end up restless or in unseaworthy conditions on overcrowded boats. If you're going out of your way to refuse to work with the Libyan Coast Guard, you're going out of your way to make sure that they do not end up back in Libya. So you're making an independent decision to go out of your way to pick up these people before the Libyan Coast Guards get to them, to then take them to Europe on the off chance that somebody will let you in, and then find yourself floating about aimlessly, scratching your head as to why this has happened. Maybe you should look at yourself for what you're doing. Nonetheless, has to be said that the refusal to bring these people back to Libya under the guise of rescuing again, of course, it's just fucking convenient. How convenient that you have taken this approach, you know? What better incentive does one need when this is the message murmured through the airwaves? It's not a word I often use, but it has to be said, it's rather applicable here without question. You are teetering on fucking retarded if you believe, still to this day, that there's people smugglers and they are NGOs and they are two separate entities, with people smugglers being the ones at fault for this ongoing phase. I mean, African migrants climb aboard boats knowing full well that not only does the UN demand that they are not returned to where they've literally just set sail from, the NGOs also have no intention of allowing them to go back to where they set sail from. You know? It's just... it's fucking ridiculous. You know? So the NGOs refuse to take them back to where they came from and end up sitting about waiting aimlessly at ports. And the only reasoning that this person can conclude from their communist wrangled brain is that the EU are trying to disincentivize them from doing what they're doing. Okay. Anyway. The Libyan Coast Guard is doing a good job, and we will keep supporting them, declared the new Italian minister in September, straight after a meeting with her German and French counterparts. However, those of us who are conducting fake rescue missions in the central Mediterranean refuse cooperation, because we know who they are and what they're capable of. I'll just pull the fucking other one. Since June of 2018, international maritime law organisations have recognised Tripoli as an official and reliable rescue coordinator centre. An MRCC is responsible for all rescue operations, quote unquote, in a specific assigned area, and for providing efficient rescue interventions at sea and ports of safety. According to the UN, however, Libya cannot be considered a port of safety. Not that that was stopping you people prior to that, but, you know, the UN do a good job of making sure that this quote-unquote crisis continues to roll on, just quite the thing. It's almost as if they want this to continue, but I don't hear them coming out to put these people off entering Libya to begin with. Oh, no. You know, where there's an ongoing war on the verge again, if not as well as the beginning of a new slave trade, which never gets any media coverage whatsoever. Don't tell me that the UN don't know about it, though. Of course they fucking do. But that doesn't bother them. Oh, no. As long as they can make their way through Libya, the minute they embark on a boat and head off from the Mediterranean, that's when they step in to make sure they don't get returned. So they don't care about the harm that could come to these people as they make their way towards Libya and then through Libya. All they care about is making sure that they don't get returned back if caught. How fucking compassionate. How very compassionate and rather convenient that things seem to play out the way that they do. You know? We were there when the Open Arms NGO found one survivor and 2 bodies, including a child, apparently abandoned in open sea. Well, it either was or it wasn't an act of abandonment, or it either happened or it didn't happen. If you were there, why are you saying apparently? Anyway, we were there when the self-declared Libyan Coast Guard threatened a rescue ship to change its route. Oh dear. We were there and sea-watched fast rescue boats and witnessed 20 people drown alongside the Libyan patrol boat. I was there myself as part of the medic team of a humanitarian vessel, listening to testimonies. Whatever. We then reached the dinghy. They started screaming and beating people, many of whom jumped in the water, some trying to swim in our direction, with so many people still at sea when the boat left. We only managed to rescue 12. Most of the others we saw drowning. I was there this summer when we crossed route with a Libyan patrol boat, approaching at high speed as we were completing the pickup from the premeditated meeting spots of 53 people with a convenient error in their method of transportation. Whenever these people elaborate on one of their thousands of repetitive journeys from A to B, there's always something wrong with their transportation, whether it's engine failure or a lack of petroleum or just something faulty with the boat itself, or in this case a faltering rubber boat. There's always something wrong to justify the rescue tagline. What about each and every time there wasn't a faltering rubber boat? What was wrong with the boat that time round? You know, these excuses should be wearing thin with people. Every time you rock up on their port with yet more African men. Well, what's wrong this time? Oh, it's another faltering rubber boat. You know, after a couple of months, you'd think that would start to wear off. The boy that cried wolf type routine or something similar. But instead of that, this bullshit has been going on for long and weary, and it has no fucking sign of ending anytime soon. Anyway, I'm not going through all the pish that they've got to say in regards to, you know, the Libyan Coast Guards, because I have seen for years they have attacked the Libyan Coast Guards, not just the person in this article, but just in general. So, in 2017, the Security Council Committee of the UN, consistently linked with violence against migrants and other human smugglers. At the beginning of 2017, journalist Nancy Perosa was first to report the testimony of whistleblowers declaring that al-Bija is the undisputed leader of migrant trafficking. Migrant trafficking. I mean, it's a great gig these people have got. If they do exist, I'll give them that, you know. Right, here you go, here's a boat. The NGOs will do the rest. Nonetheless, shortly before the inclusion of al-Bija's name on the UN sanction list, he added a high-level security meeting in Sicily, negotiating alongside other North African authorities to strategize how to best block the departure of migrants from the African coast. And you say this as if this should not be something that is discussed. Why is there African migrants from African coast heading to Europe to be picked up by NGOs? What fucking part of Syria are these people from? What war are they fleeing in the African coast? What, climate change? Pull the other one. Pull the fucking other one. The information released by an inquiry for a newspaper soon reaching major international media just days before Scalvo and Nancy Perosa were assigned personal special security, receiving threats by al-Bija for the reports. If this summer we had reached that faltering rubber boat just a few moments later, his ship would have taken those people back to a migrant detention centre where they would have most likely been incarcerated again, detained and abused before being put on a boat once again. Fuck's sake, man. You know, well, maybe if they didn't think it was a good idea to enter Libya to begin with, they wouldn't have found themselves in the circumstances which you were now trying to exploit to get them here. You know, it's rather ironic that these people talk about the desperation and the plight of these people, but yet It's them that exploit it. Luckily enough, the militia arrived after us. Finding no one on board, they settled for taking back on the engine. Why would a Coast Guard patrol ship be interested in retrieving the engine of a derelict rubber boat? The answer is obvious to those who are most familiar. It's to use it again. Oh well, you're all at it then, it seems. In the name of security, Europe has backtracked from its moral duty to provide safety and rescue people running from the hell of Libyan prisons. Whoa, backtrack a little bit here. When the fuck did that become our problem exactly? I know that the West played a major role in fucking up Libya to begin with, but the refugee crisis never said anything about Libya. Libya has become a global hub for people that intend to come over to Europe. And there's nothing anywhere that says that rescuing people then requires them to be dumped in Europe. Quite the opposite, in fact. The safest and nearest port of entry, which the UN and yourselves have conveniently decided they can't be sent back to. How convenient. There is a clear reason why we will not cooperate with the Libyan Coast Guard. That is because we want them all here. And until the African continent still has people wandering the plains of Africa, our job is not complete. This is a crime against human rights that we can't tolerate. Oh, go fuck yourself, you absolute insufferable communist wankers. Fucking hell.